Next, we're going to add our text view to the user interface to display the text "Welcome to Android App Development," and of course we'll need to configure that text view as well. To do that, we're going to drag and drop our text view onto the user interface, and you can see a few things about this right away. First of all, you'll notice that the text view is in the upper left corner of the screen, that it's displaying the text view, and it appears to have been sized precisely to the height and width of that content. And then separately, you can see that the name of this object is TextView1 by default, or its ID, if you will. Now, if I go ahead and select the text view, we can see its properties down here in the properties window, and I can scroll through and see, for example, that the height of this component, which is known as its layout height, is wrap content, so it's only as tall as it needs to be. We can see that its width is also wrap content, so it's only as wide as it needs to be. And if I keep scrolling down, we can see some other items that were set. For example, we can see, let me just stretch this a little bit differently. We can see the ID was set to @+ID TextView1. Remember, the plus sign says I'm creating this ID called TextView1 for use in my code. And if I scroll down a little further here, we can also see that the text attribute or property of this text view is explicitly set to the string text view. Now, we're going to configure some of the options for this text view now, and one of the key things we're going to do is, of course, change the text in the program to "Welcome to Android App Development." Now, it's considered a bad practice to hard code string literal values into your apps. And one of the reasons for that is, of course, Android is used all around the world, and we want to make sure that the Android apps that we build can be used by people in different locales who speak different languages. Now, just like Android is capable of having different drawable folders to represent different size screens and different pixel density screens, and it's capable also, by the way, of having different layout folders to represent, for example, portrait versus landscape orientations or different size screens. It's also capable of having different values folders for localization of values that are used inside of your apps. So, for example, I can have the main values folder, which typically represents English language strings, and then let's say I wanted this app to also be supported on devices where the locale is in French, and therefore I want to have some French language strings as well. In that case, what I can do is create a new folder in the res folder, which is values-fr. And within that folder, just like I have a strings.xml file here that defines some string resources in English, I can have a separate strings.xml file in that other values folder which defines the same string resources but in French instead of in English. And just so you can see what this strings.xml file looks like, the last time I opened it I was looking at the XML, but this is the default view that comes up, which is the Android resources editor. And here I can see that there's two string resources, one called hello with the value hello world welcome, which you've seen before. That was the original string that was displayed in the original layout that came with the app when I created it. We also have the app name string, which is just the name of the app that we created, welcome. Now, I could very easily duplicate this and put it into a values-fr folder, and what I would do differently is, you can see the string resources here in their XML form. I would keep the names of the resources exactly the same because that's how I'm going to reference the strings in code, and instead I would just put the French language strings that I'd like to display or use in my app when this app is run on a device where it's in a French locale. So it's very easy to do this kind of localization in Android. And in fact, if you go to this documentation for the application resources and read this carefully, you'll learn about things like being able to provide different layout directories for regular layouts and landscape layouts, or being able to localize, clicking the localization link here, being able to localize your resources so that you can use them with different languages. So for example, if I scroll down here, let's see if I can find a good example for you. Here's a good one. So here we have the res values strings.xml file for the English text of all the strings in the app. Then we could have res/values.fr/strings.xml for the French text, and values-ja would represent the folder for Japanese text strings that we want to use inside of our app. And again, if we go ahead and use these different properly named folders, the Android operating system is capable of recognizing qualifiers like -fr and -ja for string resources, or when we go back and talk, going back to the previous page here for a moment, and we see res/layout versus res/layout-land, it's capable of noticing that I've got these qualifiers in the folder names and then using the appropriate layout or the appropriate set of strings based on the current configuration of the device. And the configuration in the case of strings usually means the locale of the device. The configuration in the case of layouts means, is it in portrait mode or is it in landscape mode, and is it a big device with a big screen or a little device with a small screen. There's all sorts of qualifiers that are described in these application resources documents on the website that can help you understand how to properly design your app to work across the widest range of devices possible, and in the case of localization, across the widest range of locales possible as well. So with that in mind, now let's go ahead and configure our text view, and in particular we're going to start by changing the text in the text view. To do that, we're going to select the text view in the outline window. We're going to go to its text property, and we're going to replace text view with a string resource that we haven't created yet. So to create it, we're going to click the ellipsis button, which gives us the resource chooser dialog with an option to create a new string down here. And now I have the create new Android string dialog. And for this purpose, let's create a resource named welcome, which is going to be the name of our string resource, and we'll put its value as welcome to Android app development, exclamation point. And if in fact I had this as a string literal in lots of places throughout my source code, I have the ability to let the IDE replace all of the occurrences of that exact string in all my Java and XML files. I can even preview what changes would be made within the app and tell it which ones to apply and not to apply. In my case, I'm creating this for the first time, so I can just click OK, and now it selects that as the resource that's going to be used for the text property. And finally, just looking at the code here, you can, or the properties window rather here, you can see that it's saying @string/welcome. Welcome is the new resource we just created. Its type of resource is string, and this is the way you reference a string resource either in the properties window or in the XML. So for example, if I scroll over here, you can see my text property. Here it is for my text view. Android:text represents the text property in XML, and here is the way we reference that string literal. Notice the @string/ in front here. That tells Android that I'm referencing a string resource. It then goes into the appropriate values folder, looks up the value of welcome, and inserts that here in the running app so that we display the appropriate text based on the device on which I'm running this and that device's locale. So all of that's being done for you here simply by creating this new string resource. Excuse me, I accidentally closed the file. So let's go back to the graphical layout, and here of course we still have our text view and all of its properties being displayed down in the properties window. In the next video, we're going to now configure values for that text view to position it on the screen, size it, and give it some color.